Before you watch these two clips, I just wanted to address something that a lot of people might say that the two guys who you're going to see may contradict each other, or the post that I make and that other so-called black people make, or the American indigenous people make, saying that we are indigenous to America. And so the first guy is going to say that his people never came from Africa. They've always been in the Caribbean. The second guy is going to say that the Garifuna people came from Mali. They're descendants of Africans that sailed over from West Africa, specifically the area of Mali. Mali back then, the empire obviously had a different range. So if you look at the map of Mali today, it's not the same Mali from like 1,000 years ago, right? But the second guy says that a lot of the descendants of the Garifuna people came from Mali and sailed over to the West Indies. I think they're both right. I think that the first guy, his lineage, his grandparents or his mother and so on and so forth, let him know that, hey, we have always been here. There is a segment of bronze people who's always been here and who's always been indigenous American to this land. And the second guy is also right, because there was trade and travel going on between West Africa and the West Indies and the Americas already. Because there's this idea that's circulating around that the Europeans were the ones to go to every continent and then move people from continent to continent, like everybody else was just sitting and waiting for him to just arrive and then move them someplace else. No. If the South American empires, or Olmec, the Aztecs, and all those are as old as we know them to be, that means these people had enough time to explore the East and the West hemispheres. Okay, they had enough time to explore those seas, because if the Asians on the West Coast sail their boats over to the western part of South America and North America, then that means that we could sail back to Asia. And if the Africans could sail from West Africa to the eastern coast of the American continent, that means that we could sail over there. I'm going to make a longer YouTube video, about 20-30 minutes, talking about this travel and this exchange of culture, because now you have to ask, who influenced who in terms of, especially in the Caribbean. A lot of people say, well, I'm from West Africa, and then a lot of people say, well, I've always been here. I think it's both. I think you have some Africans who were sailing over here who were not slaves. They sailed over here of their own accord from their own villages or empires or whatever, and they decided to stay here. And then you had some indigenous Americans in those islands who sailed back to West Africa with goods and culture and stuff, and they decided to stay there. And so now there's a mixture of two different cultures, two different continents. So I don't want people to say it's wrong, like, oh, I never said that no Africans ever came here. But when I came across the second video, I found it very interesting. I decided I wanted to kind of dive deeper into trade between West Africa and the Americas, and not just trade as in physical objects, but things like culture and things like that, and the people. So there we go.
And I head into town to search for speakers of the Garifuna language. In Guatemala, there's about 12,000 speakers, almost all of them in Livingston. So I start my journey by heading to the area of town where they all live.
¿En the movie?
Sí, estoy grabando.
¿De dónde?
De Estados Unidos.
You from America?
Sí.
You?
Sí, también.
What brings you guys here?
Las Garifunas.
That's difficult to see. That's not easy to see.
No.
No, Garifunas don't exist anymore, homeboy.
Yeah, only Livingston.
We're going extinct.
Exactly. How many?
A long time ago, this was all black. All a sea of black. A long time ago. No, es que that language is a mixture of French and Arawak.
Right.
The Arawak.
And Carib, right? A little Carib.
Why Carib?
I think, were they like mixing with the islanders? Is that it?
Who are the Carib?
They're from South America, right? Or like the Guyanas.
Yeah.
The
Well, who are they?
I'm not sure.
You have to do your history, friend.
Yeah.
Where do you think the black people here come from?
I'm not sure. It's either like slave ship, or they came from Africa, right? What do you think?
We've never been African.
Never.
never been African.
Never.
We never been African.
They don't really say on.
We're not with the Africans. We are the Caribs.
Right.
We are the Caribs.
Maybe.
Our ancestors are the Caribs. We man this, we control this, we inhabited this.
Yeah.
The sea was named for us, the Caribbean. We are the Caribs.
I'm going to tell you comes from my lifelong experience, come from my grandparents. Some of them who I know as grandparents come from their kith and kin, their generation. Comes from my reading of certain writings, come from the speakings of a veritable sage called, who both I know and I know, Dr. Earl Kirby, of good memory, the best anthropologist and archaeologist we ever had in St. Vincent in modern times. May the Most High bless his soul. And comes from the writings of people like Dr. Edgar Adams, still alive, a Vincentian, who was the first person to write, research and write about the voyages of King Abu Bakari II, Emperor Abu Bakari II of Mali, from the Mali Empire in the 12th and 13th centuries. And that is where the origin of the people who came to be known as the Garifuna came from.
Now let me ask. I know they are also called the Kalinagos. Is it the same thing?
No.
When you hear Garifuna,
And
sometimes you hear Kalinago. I mean, is it
these
the same
are two
thing?
distinct indigenous groups. The Kalinago are well-respected people. The Kalinagos are the yellow-skinned people who came from the Orinoco Basin. They arrived a little before the Garifuna people in the Windward Islands. Maybe 100 years before, according to what I know. But
No.
they and the Garifuna people, the African people, who when they left Mali were not called Garifuna, they left Mali off their own steam in an expedition which brought a lot of food, planting material, both male and female, live animals across the Atlantic.
So it's established that the roots of the Garifuna people is Mali.
Yes, Africa, West Africa.
Now I read somewhere,
Original.
and correct me if this is wrong, but I read somewhere where it says the Garifunas were really a mix of Arawak, African, and some Indians that were in the general
Right,
area,
I'm
St.
into that,
Vincent,
right.
St. Kitts and those areas.
Well, the Kalinago, or as the European call them in a derogatory way, yellow Caribs, the word Caribs meaning savages.
Right.
So when you hear yellow Caribs, they mean yellow savage. When you hear black Caribs,
Black.
who they call the
savages.
Garifuna, they mean black savages. That is how they referred to the indigenous people. They came, according to what I know, between 900 and 1200 from the Guyanas of the coast. And the African people met with them, and they never had any war, they never had any major dispute, any interracial dispute. Of course, they would have quarrels and so on.
Right.
Not anything to lead to any
Like no major
genocide,
falling out
no.
and one
They
race.
harmonize, right? Their cultures fuse together. And the crossbreeding of them in St. Vincent is what gave rise to the Garifuna. Because the African people, they take note of this, they never, because if you look at the geography, when you come across the Atlantic, Barbados is the first island, but because Barbados is so flat, the relief, boats don't normally see Barbados until you pass the coast.
Right.
But St. Vincent is mountainous. And when you look at the latitude, St. Vincent is more logical for a lot of ships to come. Well, all the ships didn't come to St. Vincent and others. So who came to St. Vincent? Many of them settled there. They didn't settle in St. Lucia, they didn't settle in Dominica. The Kalinagos, on the other hand, were right up the coast.